Last year on Christmas Eve, I was working late.
Last year on Christmas Eve, I was working late.
I'm 23. I work in New York City and commute home every day on the train.
I'm 23. I work in New York City and commute home every day on the train.
Since I'm one of the younger ones in the office,
Since I'm one of the younger one in the office,
I got stuck with one of the worst shifts, so I wasn't able to get home until 5 o'clock. I got
I got stuck with one of the work shifts, so I wasn't able to get home until 5 o'clock.
stuck with one of the worst shifts, so I wasn't able to get home until 5 o'clock. My family had already left a whole hour earlier to go to my cousin's house, so I had to drive alone.
My family has already left a whole hour early to go to my cousin's house, so I had to drive alone.
After having a quick snack before the half-hour drive,
After having a quick snack before the half-hour drive,
I got back in my car and put my cousin's address into my phone. Snack before
I got back in my car and put my cousin's address into my
the half
phone.
hour. Halfway through the drive, it started snowing.
Halfway through the drive, it started snowing.
I got to my cousin's house around 6
I got to my cousin's house around 6 o'clock.
o'clock. It was snowing heavily by this point,
It was snowing heavy by this point,
and I just made it in time to catch everyone starting dinner.
and I just made it in time to catch everyone starting dinner.
I brought all of my gifts inside and cheerfully said hey to everyone.
I brought all of my gifts inside and cheerfully said hi to everyone.
I stayed until around 11 o'clock. The rest of my family left a little sooner.
I stayed until around 11 o'clock. The rest of my family left a little sooner.
I stayed an extra half hour or so just to hang out before leaving myself. Sooner.
I stayed
By the time I was leaving, or so, just
I stayed an extra half hour or so just to hang out before leaving
to
myself.
hang out before leaving myself. By the time I was leaving, the ground had accumulated at least 2 feet of snow, and it wasn't even done snowing.
By the time I was leaving, the ground has accumulated at least 2 feet of snow, and it wasn't even done snowing.
The drive home was nightmarish.
The day
The
home
roads were
night was
hardly even
nightmare. The
plowed,
roads
and I
were
had to drive
hardly
under 20
even
miles per
plowed, and I had to drive under 20 miles per hour on most roads.
hour on most roads. The roads were completely dead at this point, though.
The roads were completely dead at this point, most likely because everyone was smart enough to go home before the snow
Most
accumulated.
likely because everyone was smart enough to go home before the snow accumulated. Eventually, I turned onto a main
Eventually, I turned on to a main road that I sure would usually be bustling, but at the 11:15 on Christmas Eve
road
night,
that I'm sure would usually be bustling. But at 11:15 on Christmas Eve night, there wasn't a single car
there was a
or
single
a single
car
light
or
from the
single
store.
light from
It
the
was a
store.
ghost
It
town.
was a ghost town.
But then I
But
did
then
notice
I
the flashing
noticed the
taillights
flash
of one car.
taillights of one
It was
car.
parked on the
It
side of the
was parked
road,
on the
and the
side of the
smoke
road, and the smoke slipping and the smoke seeping
seeping
out
out from its
from its
exhaust with
house,
the taillights giving
with
it a
the
red
tail
tint.
light giving a real
As I
taste.
got closer,
As I got close,
I
I
realized there was
realized
somebody
there
next to
was
the car
somebody
waving
next
their
to a
hand in
car
the air.
waving their hands
I
in the.
assumed something was wrong and they
I assumed something was wrong,
needed help.
and they need help. So me being the good,
So, me being the Good Samaritan,
so me being the good Samaritan I am, I pulled up behind the car.
I pulled up behind the car. When I opened my door,
When I opened my door,
the guy approached me immediately,
the guy approaches me immediately,
barely even giving
barely even giving me time to step
me
out.
time to step out. He was an average sized man,
He was an average-sized man,
probably 5'10", 180 pounds.
probably 5 foot 10, 118 pounds.
He spoke in a very demanding voice,
He spoke in a very demanding voice,
asking me if I know anything about fixing an engine.
asked me if I know anything about fixing an engine.
I told him I didn't know much about cars.
I told him I didn't know much about car.
The guy responded very quickly to everything I said.
The guy responded very quickly to everything I said.
He told me it's fine.
He told me it's fine.
He went inside of his car for a second, popped open his trunk, came back out, and told me to just wait by the trunk for a sec. His car for
He went inside of his car for a second to pop open his trunk, came back out and told me to just wait by
a second, popped open his trunk, came back out, and told me to just wait by the trunk for a second.
trunk for a second.
I had no idea
I
what
had
he
no
wanted me to
idea what he wanted me to do. I was really
do.
confused.
I was really confused. He walked over
He
to the
walked
front of his
over to the front of his car and I
heard
hear
him
him
open
open the hood.
I couldn't see anything he
I
was
couldn't
doing
see
since the trunk was
anything he was doing since the trucks were blocking my view.
blocking my view.
And
the
the
loud wind of
lost
the
wind, the
snowstorm
wind
overpowered any
snowstorm overpower
small
any
noises he might have
small
been
noise
making.
he might have been making.
I put my hands on the back of the car
I put my hand on the back of the car
and leaned my body in
and leaned
anticipation.
my body in anticipation.
When suddenly I heard
But
3 or
suddenly
4
I
quick and
hear
aggressive leaned my body
3 or 4 quick
in
and
anticipation.
and
When suddenly I heard 3 or 4 quick and aggressive footsteps in the snow behind
footsteps in the snow behind me before I was pushed into the trunk.
before I was pushed into the trunk. The man tried to close
The man tried to close the trunk on me, but I kicked my feet up in the resistance and held it up.
the trunk on me, but I kicked my feet up in resistance and held it up. I was able to
I was able to overpower him and kick the trunk open completely.
overpower him and kick the trunk open completely. As I took
As I
advantage
took
of the few
advantage
seconds I
of
had
the
to
few
get out of the
seconds I
trunk,
had to get out of the truck,
I took out
I took
keys.
my keys.
He tried to grab me
He
now,
tried to
and I
grab me
dug
now and I
my
dug
house
my
key right
house
into his
keys
neck.
into his neck.
He fell
He fell
to his
to
knees, and his
his
scream
knees
echoed
and
down the deserted
down
street.
the
His neck. He fell to his knees, and his scream echoed down the deserted street. I was in my
I was in my car
and
and
halfway down the road before he
the
could
road
even get up
before he could even get up
from
from his knees.
A little further down, I
A
called
little further
911
down, I called 911, reports the
and
guy.
reported the guy. I
I
came
came
back in
back
10
in 10
minutes
minutes
to find
to find
blue and
blue and red light
red lights illuminating the
illuminating
windows of
the
the
window
deserted
of the
stores.
dessert store.
The police held
The police have him until
him
the
until the ambulance
ambulance arrived for
arrived
him.
for him. I watched the whole
Watched the
thing, and
whole thing
nothing ever
and
felt
nothing
better in
even
my
felt
life.
better in my life.
I got home safely
I
half
got
an
home
hour
safely half an
later and
hour
told my family
later and
everything.
took my family everything.
I was still very
I was still
shaken that
very
Christmas,
shaken
and
that
this remains
Christmas and
possibly the most
remain
horrific
possibility
thing I've
the
ever
most horrific
experienced.
I think I have ever
And this
experienced.
remains possibly the most horrific thing I've ever experienced.